Customer just dropped this Shindawa trimmer off in the shop. I don't know if I said that right or not. Don't see a lot of these. I don't think anybody around here really sells them, but I have heard of the name nonetheless. This is a brush cutter. The customer's had it for quite a while, probably I would say 30 years or better. Does not run. So when something like this comes into the shop, it's really hard to tell the customer to put any money into it. When you have a piece of equipment that's 30 years old, what is the value of the equipment? Brand new, let's say this was 450, 500 bucks brand new, being used for over 30 years, getting pretty tired. I would say if it was working, maybe 100 bucks, but you got to decide what it's worth, or if it's worth investing in a new purchase. This particular one, I did pop off the muffler. There is some piston damage, so it is not going to be worth fixing. Tried to track down the part anyway, just out of curiosity to see if it's still available, and the part is not available. But I get quite a bit of stuff that comes through the shop that's lived its life. You don't really need to put any money into it because some of the stuff's throwaways, your lower end consumer products. But even some of the Pro Series stuff, for as old as some of this stuff is when it comes into the shop, I wouldn't put the money into fixing it, because by the time you pay my labor rate at the shop, my shop rate's $100 an hour. And with prices of parts, if you're not getting aftermarket stuff, if you have to get OEM, it's pretty quickly going to exceed the value of what the stuff's actually worth. So again, I would decide right up front, once you figure out what's wrong with stuff like this, if it's worth even putting the money into it, digging into it further. There's a lot of things that you can test really quick to see if it's a cheap, simple fix. But there's also a lot of times where you got to dig into it more. And once you get into the dig into it more stage, it's really not worth investigating a whole lot of time into. So yeah, this is going to end up turning into a parts unit. The customer donated it. Another side business that I have is I try to keep as many parts as I can, and I sell them on eBay. It's been a good side hustle for me. Just stuff that would normally have got thrown away in the past. I'm able to scab off quite a bit of usable parts, and some of this stuff they don't make anymore. Some of it's hard to find. So it does help people out on eBay. I know that I've personally benefited from being able to purchase used parts on eBay for certain saws and stuff that I've been restoring that I couldn't find parts anywhere else. So get paid a little bit of money for it, but again, just that circle of life, helping other people out, doing the restoration projects as well. So this guy, like I said, is going to be parted out. We're going to be done with that one. Let me show you another one that just came into the shop recently too. I've got this McCullough PM610 saw. So again, it's going to be harder to find parts for these things. What is it actually worth if it was running? So maybe 150 bucks. I don't know. It just depends on what somebody's willing to pay for it. So if we use that as a starting point, we know my labor is $100 an hour. Right off the bat, if we're going to have to do anything more than probably 15 minutes worth of work, it's not going to be worth fixing. So sometimes stuff comes up with sentimental values, and it was dad saw, grandpa saw, whatever. I completely get that, and I work with the customer to try to get that stuff restored the best as I can. But when it comes down to a pure practical standpoint, is this worth putting money into to get it back running? I would say no. A lot of times, this will be another donor part saw. So hopefully somebody on eBay will be able to use some of the parts that I list on there and get their saw up and running. But yeah, I do try to save as much stuff as I can. The edger that I did the other day, that one was literally brand new. So yes, we spent probably $150 in parts and labor, but it was still cheaper than what buying a new one was. So yeah, it's worth doing sometimes. Sometimes it's not. But when you're in the small engine repair business, just communicate with your customers, find out what their needs are, what their expectations are, especially with stuff being as expensive as it is right now. I know steel just raised their MSRP on most all their units today, the 7th, and you're starting to get to the point now where, yeah, it might be cheaper to fix some of this stuff. Once stuff gets so expensive, it doesn't make sense to just always go out and buy it. But on the other hand, if you're buying throwaway stuff, a lot of those entry-level point, saws, trimmers, blowers, by the time you have parts and labor, it is not worth repairing. So just keep that in mind. Let me take a look at some of the questions. Yeah, the Gaddy family. Yeah, working on stuff saves a lot of money. There's a lot of people that aren't able to do that. Maybe they just don't know how to. Maybe they don't want to. So they have to end up taking stuff to the repair shop. There is always a learning curve if you don't know what you're doing as far as fixing stuff. So, you can mess stuff up. You can spend a lot of unneeded money buying parts. That's one of the worst things if you don't know what you're doing, is throwing money at stuff. But that's a good way to learn. So once you do that enough times, you learn what not to throw money at and what to look for on repairs. Most of this two-cycle stuff, small engine stuff, is all going to function about the same. So biggest things you're looking for: fuel issues, air, and spark. So start with the three basics. Always right off the bat, I always dump out the fuel just to eliminate that. I don't really care what the customer says, if they put new fuel in it or not, because most of the time, people's idea of new fuel is different from mine. Mine is new fuel, straight out of the pump, mixed it up a few days ago, took all the old gas out, put new gas in. Their version might be, hey, I had old gas in there, I dumped it out from the can that I filled last fall, didn't put any stabilizer in it, or I forgot to take out the remaining gas, I just added new gas to it. Either way, you still got bad gas. So dumping that out really helps eliminate that problem right off the bat. So fresh fuel, air, I'm always checking the airflow. So air filters are obvious, but a lot of people don't know you need to check the spark arresters. Spark arresters, if you don't know, are that little wire screen that's on the muffler. It reduces the sparks coming out of the muffler system. That can get carbon buildup on it, and it can affect the airflow. You'll have airflow in, clean air filter, but you won't have airflow out, which will end up bogging your unit. That's a common feature that I have a lot of people bringing stuff in with. And then spark. Sometimes it's a spark plug. It's a bad spark plug. Sometimes it's an ignition coil. Sometimes it's a gap, not very often, but sometimes. And that stuff can be tricky too, because there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers that buy these kits off Amazon or eBay that have aftermarket stuff. I don't even think I got one of the plugs here, but there we go. So just some of these aftermarket plugs. Here's an Oregon one. I had a couple other off-brand ones that were in units. They were getting spark, but it was intermittent spark. So when you're doing your tests, the spark would work. And then normally you would move on to the next troubleshooting issue. But when you have an intermittent running spark plug, or you have an aftermarket ignition coil and they're intermittent problems, when you're doing your tests, they might work, but then when you actually run the machine, they're not working. So that stuff, I always stick with NGK or Bosch spark plugs. I always go with OEM ignition coils and carburetors. There is no good aftermarket that I have found to using that stuff. It just creates a whole lot of other headaches that you're having to track down problems for. So once you get past all that stuff, you get to the carburetors. Carburetors, I don't usually do any adjusting until I take the carburetor apart. The reason I take the carburetor apart is there's breather holes on the back plates of the carburetor, and those will generally suck in debris, especially on chainsaws. So you're gonna wanna take those apart. You're also gonna wanna take them apart to check the diaphragms in there. So if they're brittle and they're not pliable, even if you did an adjustment, you're still gonna have a problem with the carburetor. And then if you made your adjustment and then you figure out that, hey, those diaphragms need to be replaced, you buy those, put the rebuild kit in there, now your carburetor's out of whack because you made an adjustment to try to correct a problem. where you should have just replaced that stuff to begin with, then adjusted your carburetor. So just keep that stuff in mind too. Just a little helpful hints on that stuff. The other thing is taking off your muffler and doing a piston examination. So what you're going to be looking for on the piston on the exhaust side is any scoring. So normally on a good piston, you're going to have horizontal machine marks going all the way up the piston. If you see any vertical marks, that's going to be scoring. Now, is it significant scoring where it's going to transfer onto the cylinder? I don't know. The only way to know is to take the cylinder off and check. But general rule of thumb is if you can take your finger or take a screwdriver and then catch on those on the piston, it's going to probably be transferred over to the cylinder wall. So that's another thing to keep in mind on a lot of this stuff. People don't normally check the pistons on a regular basis. The other thing to look for on pistons is on the horizontal machining marks. When they get worn down and old, those will disappear. It'll be a smooth piston, might not have any vertical scoring. But what that usually tells me is those rings are worn down, they're not sealing up against the cylinder wall, and then you're having blow by on that piston. So a lot of people don't know to check for that too. So looking at the piston and inspecting it is real important. And especially on chainsaws, you can get damage on the air intake side. So take the carburetor off, shine a light down there, slowly pull your recoil and check the condition of that piston, because there can be some scoring from debris bypass getting in there, as well as some of the sanding down issues where all your horizontal machining marks are missing. So check that stuff too. And I'm a big proponent of doing hang cord tests. If you do not know what hang cord tests are, you're gonna pick your piece of equipment up, hold it by the hang cord, and it should hold fairly good like that. If it starts dropping really quick, it's gonna be a compression issue. More than likely, it's gonna be piston damage or an air leak somewhere. So first thing that I do when something comes into the shop is do the hang cord test. And then if it doesn't pass the hang cord test, I'll look at what kind of piece of equipment it is. I'll look at what the actual value is, the way it sits now. And then I'll tell the customer, hey, it's got a piston issue, it's got an air leak issue, something going on with the compression, and these are what the parts are gonna cost for doing it. So the value of the machine is not worth fixing. So we can have that conversation without even tearing stuff apart in there, which will let the customer decide what they want to do with it. Like I said, if it's sentimental, a lot of times they'll opt to fix it. If it's just something that they've had for a lot of years, usually they'll opt to buy new. Now, I sell new stuff and I do repairs, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not trying to push anybody into buying new stuff because the margins are so low on the new stuff. Just because you sell an $800 chainsaw does not mean you make much money on it. I make more money on the repair side of things with the parts markup and the labor. So I would prefer to have the customer spend the money having me fix up their equipment instead of selling new. But I am going to educate the customer and let them make the decision that they want to do, because it's their money ultimately and I want them to be happy with it. But yeah, so a lot of people will think that you're just trying to sell new stuff, but that is not the case in the power equipment business. Any of you guys selling this stuff know that there is not a lot of meat on the bones by the time you pay credit card fees, your overhead, and everything else. So the money maker's doing the repairs in the shop, and sometimes stuff's just not worth fixing. So let's see here. Anybody have any questions on anything at all? I'm going to make a video this afternoon, and I'm going to go over a few other things that's some current news for today, especially with like the steel price increases, how that's affecting the cost of stuff. So watch out for that video later today. Not a lot of talk on that, just sort of sliding under the radar, but it's the biggest price increases that I've ever seen since I've been a dealer. And I've been a dealer, roughly 6.5 years on that. Husqvarna made some significant price increases earlier in the year. VSG, where I buy a lot of my climbing stuff from, they've made really big price increases, 30% or better this year on a lot of their stuff. So there is a lot of stuff going up in price. So don't be sticker shocked when you guys go out to try to purchase something new if you're running into really high prices, just expect that, because that's just the new norm, I guess. And as we know from COVID, once prices go up, they do not come back down. So the best price on getting something is not waiting 6 months, it's buying it right now, because generally prices on everything will be higher in 6 months. So just keep that in mind if you guys have purchases going forward. I know it's frustrating for me too. I have to carry the higher overhead, but yet I don't make any margin on stuff. So let's see here. Any questions? London, would you like a Bible verse? Sure, buddy. Give me a Bible verse of the day. I read my Bible every morning, so that's something that gets me going. I do appreciate being in the Word every day. So it's a good opportunity for me to do some self-reflection and connect with my Creator. So thanks for that. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Romans 8:18. So, but yeah, so that's my little spiel for this morning. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Like I said, watch more of my video coming tonight. I will break down the steel price increases. I will let you know where we're at on some of this stuff and what to expect when you're going to a local dealer. And again, don't take it out on the dealer. We have no control of the prices. Just know we're doing the best job we can to get you guys what you need to either take care of your own property or for your business, for your livelihoods. So with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching the video.